You're at dinner with a friend, and the bill comes. You both stare at it for a second. Then the little dance begins. I'll get it, you got last time. No, let me. Okay, then you get the next one. And just like that, it's settled. Nobody pulls out a calculator. Nobody itemizes who ate more. You just remember, you owe them one. They know it, you know it, and that quiet little ledger sits between the two of you until next time. You just used the oldest form of money on Earth. And it wasn't cash. So here's the question. How did humans invent money? And the answer is going to annoy you a little, because almost everything you were taught about it is wrong. There's a story we all learned in school about where money came from. It's clean, it's logical, it makes perfect sense. And it's basically fiction. The real story is stranger, older, and way more human. So let's start by burning down the myth. Here's the version you know. A long time ago, before money, people used barter. If you had a chicken and you wanted a pair of shoes, you had to find a shoemaker who happened to want a chicken. And if he didn't want a chicken, you were stuck. This was so clumsy and annoying that eventually humans got clever and invented money as a middleman. A thing everyone agreed had value, so you could sell your chicken for coins and buy shoes from anyone. Barter was the problem, money was the solution. Case closed. That story comes straight from Adam Smith, the founder of modern economics, back in 1776. It's in basically every textbook. Almost everyone you know believes it. There's just one problem. When anthropologists went looking for these barter societies, the ones that supposedly existed before money, they couldn't find them. Anywhere, ever. That's not an exaggeration. A Cambridge anthropologist named Caroline Humphrey put it flatly, no pure barter economy has ever been described, and there's no evidence that money ever emerged from one. Historians and anthropologists have searched, and they've found almost no example of a whole society that ran on barter before inventing money. The famous chicken for shoes world, where everybody's swapping goods on the spot, it appears to have never actually existed. It was a thought experiment that got repeated so many times everyone started treating it as history. So if barter wasn't first, what was? The answer is the thing you did at dinner. Debt, credit, trust, keeping track of who owes what. This is the idea laid out by an anthropologist named David Graeber in his book Debt, The First 5,000 Years. And once you hear it, it's hard to unsee. Because think about how a small, tight community actually works. If you live in a village of 100 people and your neighbor needs help fixing his roof, you don't haggle. You don't say, that'll be 2 chickens and a basket of grain, payment up front. You just help him fix the roof. And now, informally, he owes you one. Maybe next month he gives you some of his harvest. Maybe next year he helps you when your kid is sick. Nobody's counting exactly. It's all held in memory and trust. That's not barter. And it's not cash. It's a giant invisible web of debts and favors running on relationships. And that is how humans actually handled value for most of our existence. Not by trading objects on the spot, but by remembering who did what for whom, and trusting it would balance out over time. You still do it today, with friends, with family, with the person who covers dinner. That instinct is ancient. It came long before coins. But here's the catch. A web of memory and trust works great when you know everyone. When it's 100 people who all grew up together, your brain can keep track. But what happens when society gets bigger? When there are thousands of people and strangers and no single person can remember every debt? The trust system starts to crack. You need a way to record it. Something outside of human memory. And that's where the first real money shows up. Except it doesn't look like money. It looks like homework. Over 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, people started writing debts down on clay tablets. These are some of the oldest written documents humans have ever found, and a huge number of them are not poetry, not stories, not laws. They're receipts, accounts. This person owes the temple this much grain. That person owes that much silver. The very first writing was essentially an ancient spreadsheet for keeping track of who owed whom. And notice what money actually was at this point. It wasn't a coin you held. It was a unit of measurement. The Mesopotamians used a standard, a fixed amount of silver or a fixed amount of barley, not necessarily to pass around, but to measure debts against. It was a ruler for value, a way to say your debt and my debt can be compared on the same scale. And crucially, this system came out of temples and rulers and bureaucracy, out of taxes, tribute, and record keeping, not out of merchants haggling in a market. Money was born as accounting, as a way for the powerful to track what everyone owed. So where does barter actually fit into all this? Because it does exist. People have swapped goods directly throughout history. Here's the twist. Barter mostly happened between strangers and enemies. Think about it. Inside your own community, you use trust and debt. You help people. They owe you. It all balances. But when a stranger from a hostile tribe shows up, someone you'll probably never see again and definitely don't trust, you're not going to extend them credit. You're not going to say, just pay me back whenever. You want a fair swap. Right now, on the spot. My goods for your goods, done. Goodbye, so barter wasn't the everyday economy that money replaced. It was the awkward thing you did with outsiders, precisely because there was no trust to build a debt on. The textbook had it exactly backwards. So let's rebuild the real timeline. First came trust and debt, the invisible web of favors and obligations that small human communities ran on for tens of thousands of years, held together by memory. Then, as societies grew too big to remember everything, came recorded debt, clay tablets, and accounting systems that tracked value using standard units like silver and grain. This was the first money, and it was information, not objects. Then came physical commodity money, actual objects with recognized value that you could hand over. And the greatest of these, the most successful money in human history, wasn't gold. It wasn't silver. It was a little shell, the cowrie shell, a small, glossy sea snail shell, mostly from the waters around the Maldives. And these things were used as money across an absolutely staggering stretch of the world and time. Parts of Africa, Asia, and the Indian Ocean used cowries as currency for over 3,000 years. Think about that. No coin, no bill, no dollar has ever come close to that kind of run. The cowrie was durable, it was small and easy to carry, and best of all, it was nearly impossible to counterfeit. You can't exactly fake a seashell in your backyard. One African king, King Gizo of Dahomey, actually said he preferred cowries to gold, because with shells, he'd always get a fair price. But the story of the cowrie has a dark turn, and it's worth telling, because when European traders showed up in West Africa, they realized these shells were the local money. So they started shipping cowries in by the ton, straight from the Maldives, and they used that shell money to buy something horrific. People. By the late 1600s, cowrie shells had become a primary currency of the transatlantic slave trade. European merchants bought enslaved West Africans with boatloads of shells. The most successful, longest-lasting money humans ever made became a tool for buying and selling human beings. Money, it turns out, doesn't have to be evil, but it will carry out whatever the people holding it decide to do. And only then, relatively late in the whole story, came the thing we actually picture when we imagine money being invented. Coins. Around 2,600 years ago, in a kingdom called Lydia. People started minting standardized metal coins, stamped and official. So why did coins catch on, if humans had gotten by for so long without them? And here's a fascinating answer. Soldiers, think about it, the trust and debt system works great in a village where everyone knows each other. But an empire has armies, thousands of soldiers marching through foreign lands, surrounded by strangers who have every reason to hate them. You can't run a soldier on credit. No stranger in a conquered town is going to extend a loan to the armed man who might rob them tomorrow. So, states started paying soldiers in coins, hard, portable value the soldier could spend anywhere on the spot. And then, cleverly, those same states demanded that their citizens pay taxes back in those exact coins, which forced everyone to get their hands on the coins, which meant everyone had to sell things to the soldiers to earn them. In one move, the state created an entire cash economy to feed its army. Coins and war grew up together. Coins feel like the beginning of money. They're actually near the end. And even after coins, the old ways never really died. In medieval England, for hundreds of years, a big part of the economy ran on tally sticks, literally notched pieces of wood that recorded a debt. You'd carve the amount owed across a stick, then split it down the middle, and each person kept half. The matching notches proved the debt was real. A national economy, running on split sticks of wood, right in the heart of Europe, thousands of years after those first clay tablets. Because the core idea never changed. Money was always, underneath, just a record of who owes what. Which brings the whole thing back around to you and that dinner bill. When you tell your friend you got last time, I'll get the next one. You're not doing something modern. You're not doing something small. You're running the oldest economic system humans ever had. Older than coins, older than banks, older than the very idea of a price. You're keeping a debt in your head, backed by nothing but trust, because that's what humans have done since long before anyone stamped a face onto a piece of metal. Money didn't start as a coin in someone's hand. It started as a promise between two people who trusted each other. Everything else, the silver, the shells, the coins, the paper, the numbers glowing in your banking app, is just humanity's endless attempt to scale up that one simple thing you did at dinner tonight. Remembering who owes who, and trusting it'll come back around.